to be for his own part, for his own portion. I will make for him an ezer kenegdo. Now the word ezer, it's difficult to translate. I think helper's the best option. We'll get to why that's still, we got to be careful with it. Sometimes people today suggest we should translate that like companion. And that might be a good translation in a specific sense, but it doesn't say enough, because a companion could just be someone who's along for the ride, right? Does that make sense? Somebody who's along for the ride with no active role to play. And that's certainly not what God is making when he's talking about the woman. The reason that people today don't like the word helper is that in English, there's lots of different nuances that word can have, lots of different forces that word could have. And one of those forces is it can be something that implies an inferiority. Okay? So in other words, like some of the synonyms for helper, you might say like this, like assistant, aid, or maybe derogatorily, a gopher, right? A helper, somebody who gets me coffee when I need coffee, kind of thing. And again, that's certainly not what God is making in making the woman. Are we okay with that? Nonetheless, I think that the word helper is the best word. Why is that? Because a helper, most basically, is someone who helps another person in their need. Which actually, in that sense, something like the word gopher doesn't do it justice. Why? Because like I don't really need help with anything in that case, right? Or another kind of, not derogatory, but patronizing kind of way we could use this word is like if I say that like, so my kids like to come and help me with stuff. They like to come, and if I'm doing, say, like some woodworking, we built a storage rack for some storage stuff in the fish house, which is our kind of storage house over here on the church property. And my oldest daughter wanted to come and help me. So there she was, she was my helper. But that's not really the right word exactly. Why? Because I didn't need her help. I didn't actually need help, right? Now, I'm not trying to be condescending there, but that's the truth. That's the fact of it. In fact, how many of you have ever done something with a small child? Okay, true or false? It takes you 3 times as long. Usually to like maybe actually do a little bit of a worse job, right? Now that's not bad. That's good because I'm actually raising kids. I want them to learn how to work hard and learn how to do like competent things. That's all good. But the word helper there, if we were to apply the word helper, that's not what's being talked about. Why? Because I don't actually need help. My daughter in that situation is not rendering help to me in my need. But the word ezer, it does refer to someone who really, like capital H, helps another person in their need. It's used 16 times in the Hebrew Bible, and incidentally, in almost every case, the word ezer refers not to a human, but to God. This is one of the ways that we can tell. In English, maybe we think that the word helper can connotate some kind of an inferiority. It certainly doesn't have that force in Hebrew. Why? Because God is not inferior to his people. Yes? God is the one who helps his people in their time of need. Now, what form does this help take? When it's talking about God, there's really 3 kinds of ideas that this is carrying. One is God's help against an adversary. So, for example, Moses named one of his sons Eliezer. Exodus chapter 18, verse 4, and then immediately tells us why he named him that. The name of the other, he named him Eliezer, for he said, "The God of my father was my help, and he delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh." Right? Eliezer, that's, again, a compound word. El, meaning God. The I in that is a first-person suffix, and then ezer, help. What does that mean? The name actually means God is my help. And Moses saw that. The God of my father was my help, and he delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. So in this case, what does the help from God look like? It looks like God standing with Pharaoh, with Moses against his enemy, Pharaoh, and delivering him from the sword of Pharaoh. Later in the Torah, in Moses' final blessing on the people of Israel, he called Yahweh the shield of Israel's help. Deuteronomy chapter 33 and verse 29, he says, "Happy are you, O Israel, who is like you, a people saved by the Lord, the shield of your help and the sword of your triumph. Your enemies shall come fawning to you, and you shall tread upon their backs." And then David later referred to Yahweh as the one who helps and holds up or supports his people. So Psalm 20, the first two verses, "May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and give you support from Zion." So it's clear, right, from these texts and from other texts, the Hebrew word, azer, does not denote an inferiority or a trivial patronizing status. For God is the helper to his people. So what is it then? Well, it's the one who gives aid in the time of need. Right? So the man here is in need. He cannot do what God has created him to do on his own. He will be a narcissist. He will devolve. He will not fulfill God's intention for him. And so the woman that God makes helps him in his time of need. Now, what does that help look like? Well, throughout the rest of the Bible, you've got maybe three ideas there. She is to stand with him in danger. So it goes sideways, but for example, in Genesis chapter 3, what you find is that when the serpent comes and is trying to invade the garden, right, and the man is supposed to guard the garden, to work it and to keep watch over it. And here comes the serpent, and he starts talking to the woman, but the man's standing right there. Now again, that doesn't go well, and we'll get to why that is in another sermon. But you can imagine that though there. I don't think the problem is that the woman was present at all. That's not the problem. And what you see there is the man and the woman standing together against the adversary. Yes? And in that sense, she is there, and she's helping him. Now, spoiler alert, he's a coward, and he abdicates his responsibility, so the whole thing goes sideways. But the point is they're standing there together in danger against the adversary. Another layer of this is that she gives him support and help in the time of need, and she shields him.